We're at the VSCC's Snetterton meeting, the Seaman Memorial Trophy, ending their race season, and we're talking to Christopher Mann, who's got two very, very different, absolutely gorgeous Alfa Romeos here. A 1933 Alfa Romeo Tipo BP3 in the Premier Crew Pre-41 racing cars series, and also racing a 1953 Alfa Romeo Disco Volante, a car I have to admit I've never seen before, in the 1950 sports racing cars. Firstly, Christopher, must be very pleasurable to turn up with two such nice cars and then be able to take them out on track.
Well, it's even better to drive them on the road, actually. The Disco Volante we drove in this morning, and that was absolutely lovely. And by the way, the reason you probably haven't seen one of these before is because this is actually the only one in the country, and is the only 3-litre Disco Volante. There are one or two others, but it's quite rare.
I was going to say, absolutely gorgeous looking car. What's the history of this particular car?
Well, this particular car was a prototype 3-litre car for the 3-litre sports racing formula, which started in 54, I think, to 57. But Alfa Romeo, very unluckily, managed to crash it. Their Formula One driver Sanesi took it out at Monza for the Supercorta Maggiore Grand Prix in 54 and stuffed it at the Lesmo corners, and the car was, quote, written off, but ended up in a museum in Brazil. So we managed to rebuild it over about 20 years, starting about 35 years ago. So here it is.
So obviously a labour of love to reduce it, to return it to such absolutely immaculate condition, and it's almost your classic Italian car of that period, even down to the machined dashboard.
Yes, that's true. It's a very unusual piece and a bit quirky, a bit Alfa Romeo, but very advanced for its time. And short stroke, 3-litre high revving engine, which was pretty powerful for its period. And the car is a long distance car. It's heavy, it's strong, and it's just the most tremendous fun to drive. Very unluckily, though, I got too enthusiastic and stuffed it into the bank at St Mary's at Goodwood at the revival, but that was 2 weeks ago. But we managed to get it back, or rather I should say Neil Twyman and his crew got it back together for us for this meeting, and my wife has some pictures of it as it was then, and if you see her then and now, if she gives you a copy, you might your readers might find it quite interesting as to what can be done in a short time to a severely stuffed motor car. But luckily no harm to the car. The driver doesn't really matter.
Almost from the affection that you're talking about the car, I assume that both on the road and on the track it's a highly enjoyable car to drive.
It's absolutely lovely. It's a real Alfa Romeo. I've owned it together with the late Henry Wessels, who was a real Alfisti, and whom I shared another Disco Volante some 30-odd years ago, and we just absolutely love them. There's a generic feeling with Alfa Romeos. People think that Ferraris are better, but actually one has to remember that Alfa Romeo had a massive factory, and when they wanted to do something properly, they really did something properly, and you can see that if you look at the P3, which is the first of the monoposto Alfas, which Jarno designed, and which, of course, Scuderia Ferrari ran in the period 1931 to 1934 or so, when they had about 15 of those cars.
Looking back, looking at the monoposto car, the responsibility of taking out what is essentially an 80-year-old racing car, and yet this morning I was looking, you weren't hanging around out there, let's put it that way.
Well, I don't think anyone who's got any of these cars hangs around. I have the utmost respect for all the drivers, but although it may have looked as if I wasn't hanging around, believe me, I was taking it very, very carefully. The car was unfortunately crashed at the Clausen Hill climb 2 years ago, and I'm not fully confident that you can do everything with it, so I'm driving it well within I hope I'm driving it within my and its capabilities. But yes, it is a fast car, so you've got to be very, very careful with it.
I think for anyone also used to just modern cars, it looks a very physical experience to drive that car.
Well, as you saw before we did the interview, I wanted to get out of my racing things, not because I wanted not to be a poser or something, but because, frankly, you sweat so much, it's very uncomfortable and much nicer to be in dry clothes. So, yes, it is physical. The cars do require quite a bit of effort. In all respects, you're balancing the car on the edge of adhesion, you're braking hard, you become kind of one with the car, and they are quite physical. Yeah.
You spoke about having to rebuild this car. To our left, the Volante, over a length of time. Well, how do you rebuild it? Where do you get the parts from, the consumables on cars like this?
Well, the most of the original hardware of the car was there. It came out of this museum in Brazil that Colin Crabb had liberated this and a number of other cars, because the guy who owned the museum got shot by his mistress. He wasn't paying enough attention to her, playing around with too many cars, so that was the end of him. But eventually Colin liberated this and a number of other of his cars. And how to rebuild it? Well, if you've got an original engine, gearbox, back axle, front axle, steering, some chassis bits, or an original radiator, etc., etc., and all you're really lacking is a body, then take it to Italy, and the people who can redo the bodies, which is what was done with this one, copying the original photographs and original drawings.
Christopher, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you very much for bringing two such wonderful cars along today, and we'll hope to see you on the track later. Thank you very much.